From the chariots and bows of ancient Egypt to the swords and spears of Rome, to the tanks and planes of Britain and Germany, there have been many armies, great and small, throughout the ages. These armies have had thousands and thousands of leaders, some great who were loved by their men and led great victories, and some were failures of both their men and their causes, losing battle after battle. This is the list of the 100 leaders who were the greatest in history. This list attempts to take into account their battlefield strategy, overall grand strategy, as well as how they handled logistics, and what they were able to accomplish with the number of troops they had. Please also keep in mind that while I do think this is a good list, at the end of the day it is my own opinion, and it's just for fun. Number 90. Ieyasu Tokugawa. The Sengoku period in Japan was a time of constant warfare and many different military leaders. Ieyasu Tokugawa emerged from this period as the first shogun of a united Japan, and his family would stay leader of Japan for over 200 years. Early in his life, Tokugawa was actually sold into captivity by his own father, which is perhaps what allowed him to quickly adapt to his surroundings and brilliantly maneuver complicated political situations. With the constant warring of the period, Tokugawa was a brilliant politician who was able to keep himself aligned with the proper warlords, so that he could succeed in becoming ruler of the country. Early, Tokugawa was aligned with Oda Nobunaga and fought several key battles with him, managing to gain much power and make himself an invaluable ally. He continued as an ally of Toyotomi Hideyoshi when he came to power, helping him also win key battles to unite all of Japan under his banner. When Hideyoshi died, Tokugawa won the ensuing power struggle, becoming the sole ruler of Japan and the first shogun to rule a united Japan. While this was a wildly complicated time with many powerful warlords, Tokugawa was the man who emerged as the first ruler of a united Japan. Number 89. George Washington. The general who oversaw American victory in the Revolutionary War, he was also the first president of the United States, and while he is often remembered more for his political leadership, his military leadership is one of the primary reasons the U.S. was able to gain its independence. Washington got his first military experience under British rule when he led British forces in the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War, as it is known in the U.S. Once the Revolutionary War broke out, Washington was quickly named Commander-in-Chief of the American forces. At the time, the British were the most powerful military force in the world, while the U.S. military didn't really exist at the start of the war. Washington was not necessarily a brilliant battlefield strategist, but what he was good at was seeing what his chance was to win the war and fighting in such a way that it gave him that chance to win. He managed to spread the British out and kept from fighting any major battles that could have lost him the war, and he was instead able to use guerrilla tactics and ultimately win a war of attrition. After the war, he was the most popular man in the U.S., leading to him being elected as the first president. His leadership, both militarily and politically, are what led to him being known as the Father of the United States. Number 88. Basil II. You have to be a great military leader to earn the nickname the Bulgar Slayer. Any joking aside, though, Basil II, the Emperor of Byzantium, brought the empire to one of the most powerful points it had seen. After quelling a rebellion at home, Basil moved against the Bulgarian Empire. While he suffered early defeats that forced him to return home and even had to put down another rebellion, clever politics and learning from past mistakes allowed Basil to go on the offensive again several years later. He initially attacked the Fatimid Caliphate and brought much of Iraq, as well as Syria, under his control. He then attacked Georgia, conquering even more territory. Having now won victories, and feeling secure at home, Basil was able to turn his attention to Europe and the Bulgarians. The Bulgars had become emboldened by some of the unrest that had taken place early in Basil's reign. With some territory in the east conquered and rebellions at home put to rest, Basil attacked and took most of the Bulgarian territory. His conquest greatly expanded the territory of the empire, and was the last time Byzantium would see significant territorial expansion. Number 87. Epaminondas. Sparta is renowned as one of the greatest military cultures of its time, and indeed all of history. So to defeat Sparta would take a truly special leader. That special leader was Epaminondas. After helping to defeat Persia in the Peloponnesian Wars, the Theban city-state had gained some strength, and Epaminondas took advantage of this newfound strength. During this time, Sparta had alienated many of the Greek states, and Epaminondas took the initiative, becoming the first Greek state to take on Sparta and defeat them in battle. Following this success, Thebes became the most powerful Greek city-state, and with her allies, formed the Theban hegemony. As Thebes grew in power, there was more opposition, and Epaminondas led more victories, further securing Thebes' position. He proved his abilities in battle by soundly defeating Sparta not only once but twice. And while he was killed in the second of these battles, and the Theban hegemony fell apart a few short years later, Epaminondas still stands as the first man to defeat Sparta, and he was able to bring Thebes to the forefront of Greek influence. Number 86. Ranjit Singh. Known as the Lion of Punjab, Ranjit Singh was the man that brought together the largest empire of the time on the Indian subcontinent. Despite childhood smallpox that blinded him in one eye, Singh actually witnessed his first battle at the age of 10. His father died shortly after, leading to him becoming leader at a very young age. He led his first engagement at 17 years old, and a couple years later, he was able to subdue the Lahore region, bringing it completely under his control. At just 21 years of age, with much territory now under his control, Singh declared himself the Maharaja of Punjab, officially bringing the entire region under his control. Over the next several decades, Singh would continue to expand his territory, and his military success made his empire so secure it even allowed him to sign a treaty with the British East India Trading Company. Singh's Sikh empire remained the last holdout against British rule in the region. Even though shortly after his death his empire did fall into British hands, his success throughout decades of military campaigns is still legendary. Number 85. Suleiman I. Suleiman I, or Suleiman the Magnificent, as he is more commonly known, oversaw the Ottoman Empire at its most powerful point. Despite his predecessors' expansions, they had all failed to expand far into Europe, and had always been repelled at the Kingdom of Hungary. Suleiman was able to defeat Hungary and sack the important city of Belgrade. He also took the island of Rhodes, that had been the lone Christian stronghold in the Mediterranean. Even though his siege of Vienna did not succeed, this was the farthest that the Ottomans would ever campaign into Europe. He later continued his conquests, attacking the Safavid Empire, and was able to conquer most of what is modern-day Iraq, expanding the empire to its greatest point. Under Suleiman, the Ottomans had taken the important cities of Belgrade and Baghdad, and for the first time had become major players in European politics. While the Ottoman Empire would begin a swift decline over the next century, the man that brought this empire to its peak is certainly one of the greatest military leaders of the time. Number 84. Trajan. From the man that brought the Ottoman Empire to its greatest point, we move to the man that brought Rome to its greatest point. Trajan is known as the second of the 5 good emperors, and is the one who enjoyed the most military success. Trajan was the first Roman emperor who was not born on the Italian peninsula, being born on what is modern-day Andalusia in Spain. Trajan was a popular military leader, which is what led to him becoming emperor after the death of Nerva. His first military accomplishment as emperor was to conquer Dacia, which had long been a thorn in the side of the Romans. Despite Dacia having been successful in previous battles with Rome, Trajan was able to subdue them and bring their territory under Roman control. After consolidating power over Dacia, Trajan turned his attention to the Middle East, conquering huge amounts of land from the Parthian Empire, expanding as far out as modern-day Iran. Although this land would be taken back within a few years of being conquered, this marked the largest expansion the Roman Empire would ever see. After putting down a Jewish revolt, Trajan would die shortly after, but is still remembered as one of the greatest emperors Rome has ever seen. Number 83. Togo Hihachiru. Today, we know of Japan as a country with a decorated naval history and one of the naval superpowers of the last century. However, this was not always true, and in the early 20th century, Japan was considered by many European nations to be a backward Asian country that could not stand up to the European superpowers. Togo Hihachiru was the man that showed them this was not the case. When Togo was young and still in training, he was actually sent to Britain to study naval warfare. A few years after returning, Togo was given command of his own ship and participated in the Sino-Japanese War. After this war, he would be promoted to Admiral of the Imperial Japanese Navy, and during the Russo-Japanese War, early in the 20th century, Togo would win the key Battle of Tsushima, which completely decimated the Russian fleet in the Pacific, destroying 22 Russian ships. This forced Russia to sue for peace and ended the war with a Japanese victory, shocking the world and humiliating the Russians. And this showed the world that Japan was not a backward nation, but one to be reckoned with, and set them up for decades of naval success in the Pacific. Number 82. Thutmose III. One of the first true conquerors of history, Thutmose III was the pharaoh that greatly expanded Egypt and made it one of the first great empires of the world. At the start of Thutmose's reign, Egypt was a powerful empire for the time, but had not expanded much outside of its native borders. Thutmose became only the second pharaoh to cross the Euphrates River and campaigned into the Levant and modern-day Syria. Thutmose fought over 17 campaigns, including the famous Battle of Megiddo, which is possibly the oldest battle that we have a full record of what happened and the tactics that were used. Thutmose was able to take his men down a narrow river valley, catching the king of Kadesh off guard and quickly routing his army. These tactics are what allowed Thutmose to continue fighting military campaigns over the decades and make Egypt the first great empire of the ancient world. Though the sources from the time are somewhat limited, it does seem that Thutmose had far superior tactics for the time, and was able to use his superior fighting abilities to continue expanding throughout his reign. Number 81. Aurelian. In the year 270, the Roman Empire was not what it had once been. There had been a series of ineffectual leaders and rebellions that had greatly weakened the empire. Aurelian was the emperor that was able to bring it back to some of its former glory. Aurelian spent the first year of his reign primarily putting down domestic rebellions, as well as barbarian raids in northern Italy. While the raids were eventually put down, Aurelian did suffer a major defeat and a barbarian army did threaten Rome, leading to a bolstering of the defenses of the city. With Rome and the Italian peninsula secured, Aurelian moved on to other parts of the empire. In just 3 years, Aurelian conquered huge regions of the Palmyrene Empire in the Middle East, as well as reconquering the Gallic Empire, bringing most of modern-day France back under control. In 5 years as emperor, Aurelian not only managed to quell all the internal revolts and the barbarian raids that had been threatening the empire, but reconquered huge amounts of territory. His untimely murder brings up one of the great what-ifs in history, but he still stands as one of the greatest military leaders in Roman history. Thanks for watching. I do hope you enjoyed that video. Either way, leave me a comment letting me know what you thought of it, and I will see you all in the next one.